You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
We are back with another episode of Dynasty Theory. We got a lot to get through tonight, guys. But before we get there, Dan, what's going on, man? A little bit of a different camera angle for you.
Hey, we're mixing it totally up, man. You know, when Delta Lemon make lemonade with technology. So we're from the MacBook tonight. But great to be here. I'm excited to talk Dynasty football because, like, real life football was very heartbreaking this week. Every game I went to, coached, watched, just ended in heartbreak, whether it be freshman, high school, college, Cowboys. So let's talk some Dynasty. I'm ready. That's at least
Mitch,
going
what's
well.
Up? What's up, Mitch?
I'm ready for it. Like, we actually have big news to get to, so let's just get into it.
There's a lot of injuries. So as we typically do behind the scenes, I go through, I make the show notes. And I mean, even as of this morning, we had things kind of set. And as the day went on, the show notes kind of got flipped upside down. And we're going to be spending a majority of tonight's episode talking about the injuries that have been coming out throughout the day. Again, we're recording Monday night. So anything that's come out earlier today, not so much the injuries themselves, but the impact it's going to have for Dynasty purposes. And the first one, I've already had a few trades go through involving this player ever since the news broke, but Isiah Pacheco, the fractured fibula, we're seeing timelines of 6 to 8 weeks. Jeff in the DD fantasy football Discord, he's our injury guy. And he said, I'd be surprised if it's 6 to 8 weeks. It might be a little bit longer. So, Mitch, we've recently talked about Isiah Pacheco on this show. Mm-hmm. How is this injury impacting things for you?
Honestly, it just makes it so, I think we were all really high on him 2 weeks ago. Going into this week's game, he looked really good running the ball. Almost played him in DFS, but I got off that. But as far as like how I think the Chiefs are going to go moving forward, I don't want any back that's going to go in there. I don't care if they sign Kareem Hunt. What I think they're going to do is they're going to split it between P. Ryan, Carson Still's going to get some, Kareem Hunt, whoever they bring in. And it's just none of them are going to be playable. You're going to be praying for touchdowns. And we already know that the Chiefs are more than happy to go and throw every single time in the red zone. We've saw it previous years. We could see that moving forward now because they have so much talent at the receiving positions now. It sucks for Pacheco because I was really high on him. I loved what this offense was doing. But now that he's out, I don't want anyone in that backfield.
Yeah, not just the backfield itself. I think P. Ryan offers some, Justice Hill like situation.
If you need that, sure.
He might be able to get you 8 points here and there in full PPR. Carson Steele, we're seeing Carson Steele questions come up within the Discord community. Don't get greedy in situations like this. No. If somehow the opportunity presents itself to cash out for a third, I think you take that and run. Mm-hmm. It's a situation too. I would add a fourth to get a third. Mitch, I know you answered a question and it was the old 2-3 swap. If that's possible, yeah, sign me up. Even if it bumps you up just a few spots, that's where I am. Mm-hmm. So Dan, not so much Carson Steele, Samaje Perine, possibly the washed Kareem Hunt if he comes into town. We know he has the visit there in Kansas City, but Isiah Pacheco himself, he was trading at running back 11, and now he's going to miss most of the season here on out for fantasy purposes. How are you viewing Isiah Pacheco, and how does this really change his value?
This definitely hurts right now, JB, and I think you have the right idea because you just happen to be we were in the same league together where I saw you make a trade tonight. And like before this injury, I had him in this like tier with Kenneth Walker and James Cook, that early mid-20s running back that just really ideal fit on your roster. Now, depending on what your running back situation is, all right, I like what you did of packaging a second round pick with him for a third and James Cook. I think that's what you did, correct?
It was Rashad White.
Rashad White. So he's kind of near that. He's in that close to that tier as well. So if you could get a running back like that, like I don't think you're losing anything because those guys are all kind of clustered in this tier together. So as far as Pacheco, for me, like it's more like a win now. This stinks. I don't want to just punt him and get like an old running back that I'm going to miss Pacheco in a year. But if I could get someone that's in that, young middle-aged 20 tier with him, I'll move him in a heartbeat. But it hurts for now, but it'll heal. He'll be back. It just might not be as soon as we want.
Now, what I've been looking at, so I had very few shares within my sleeper portfolio. MFL, all of the leagues, they pretty much lock and you can't trade until the next week opens up. But I'm doing a few things. I'm looking at teams that are on the verge of being 0-2. And, well, JB, why would they want to take on a running back? Well, maybe there's a chance they have a lingering older running back. Maybe it's like an Aaron Jones and you could do some kind of swap elsewhere. And they don't care that they're missing out on the production. They see a younger back that, when healthy, is getting a lion's share of the work there in Kansas City. So I think that's one of the situations. And I think this is where knowing your league mates comes into play. If you have folks that are always jumping on that buy injured players, I think that's an opportunity there. The way I'm looking at this, I moved Isiah Pacheco down several tiers, right? And he is still in a spot where he's young enough to be able to move off of him. Like I said, if somebody had an older running back that they're not competing, so there's no need for him. I don't know if there's going to be many spots where you see Pacheco for a pick. That doesn't really make sense in most situations. The only thing I could think of as well, if somebody has a strong team and they're looking at Pacheco to help bolster their lineup towards the end of the season for the a nice playoff run, maybe that's something where you could see a pick involved because they're playing the long game and looking down the road. But it's a big hit for me. And we talked about it already with Isiah Pacheco. He's going on, 2025, that's the last year of his deal. So he has one more year in Kansas City. Is he 100% when he comes back? With running backs, you look at the next six weeks sometimes. That's a lot of their value. So you're not playing the long game here necessarily. So I think Isiah Pacheco, I'm certainly not looking to acquire. I'm not looking to go out and buy that dip if it's there. I think it's going to be rather difficult, though, to be able to get anything done with a lot of managers that see Isiah Pacheco. He's still a stud. I'll hold on to him when he comes back. Any other thoughts on Pacheco before we move on?
I was going to say real quick, like we talked about it 2 weeks ago. This is the problem with this kind of back, right? To where if he gets injured, I even think I brought up, if he misses 6 to 8 weeks, what's going to happen to his value, right? Pacheco was never going to really gain value this year. You were hoping he was going to hold it. You were hoping that he was going to be really good on your contending team. But something like this happens, then all of a sudden, now, John has him ranked right by Najee Harris. And I think it's a smart ranking. And, this is what happens to that kind of back. So I just think it's something to keep in back of your mind with all of these kinds of backs, moving up a little bit. If something happens to a Joe Mixon, Ramondre, David Montgomery at this point, they're all just diving in value immediately.
Yeah, any of them. Alvin Kamara, if he goes down with a serious injury, his value is in the crapper. Brian Robinson, Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason too. Like, if you can get off from Isiah Pacheco for a reasonable return, like I have him cross positionally, you might be able to get like a Christian Watson. If you're not contending and you have him stuck on your roster, I know you think Christian Watson, you think he didn't have a target this week with Malik Willis, which I was very surprised to see. A little upset by that. But anyway, Cooper Kupp, he's probably going to the IR, guys. Mm-hmm. This is not a situation where same team. You look at a player like Puka Nacua, he's young enough to be able to withstand going on IR and still maintain a good amount of his value. Dan, how are you looking at Cooper Kupp right now?
Man, give me that like skull emoji. You know, when you post that he got injured today, that's what I'm giving here. I think Mitch hit on it last week. I think it was Mitch or JB. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago or JB last week that we just said, it was you, JB. You want nothing of Kupp. And I think it was 2 weeks before where Mitch and I were just saying how like the Rams abuse their players. Like I think we've had talks on Dynasty Theory that like we predict the future because we just says, hey, Puka's out. They abuse the receivers. What happened this week? They just hammered Kupp and he got crushed and now he's hurt again. So I have really no faith of like any Rams receivers at this point really coming back and not getting just run into the ground. McVay's a genius schemer and he's such a smart dude and Stafford's such a great quarterback. But man, the way they use receivers is at a high rate concerning. So I'm out on Kupp. I wasn't, it was nice when him and Puka were both running side by side and they were crushing it, but I just don't think that's sustainable in Los Angeles.
It's extremely difficult for Cooper Kupp, and then the next guy we're going to talk about here in a second, but Deebo Samuel, like they're older receivers. If you're rebuilding, you don't want them. If you're contending, unless you see value down the road, just like we talked about Pacheco, and you have the assets and you're interested in buying low, okay, that's probably the only scenario that you see a lot of trades get done over the next couple weeks. Mitch, are you going to be going out and trying to acquire Isiah Pacheco?
No.
Cooper Kupp?
No.
I'm still thinking about Pacheco. Yeah. Cooper Kupp?
No. Honestly, thinking about this offense, I know everyone's going to talk about like Demarcus Robinson. I think he's kind of the one. If Tutu Atwell is kind of out there, we've seen him perform in games like this to when players were out. Then all of a sudden everyone's talking about these other pieces just because we hated Tutu Atwell and where he was drafted, right? I think he's going to be the quiet one that you could spend like half the amount on to get him on your rosters. And I think his target share is going to be just close to or equal to whatever Robinson and whoever else is putting out there.
Well, I would guess going into waiver wire, waivers this week, Tyler Johnson's probably rostered already because of last week.
Yeah, from previous week. Yeah.
Demarcus Robinson rostered because of last week. Tutu is probably available in a lot of leagues.
And I don't think you're going to have to put in a whole bunch of fab to get him.
No, and I think this creates an opportunity maybe for Kyren in the passing game. Maybe we see a little bit more of a mix with Blake Corum coming in from a rushing perspective now. If we're going to see Kyren utilized maybe a little bit more in a passing capacity. But again, like Dan just said, they kind of ride their players into the ground, right?
Yep.
So maybe we don't see that. This negatively impacts Matthew Stafford.
Oh, yeah.
He's an older quarterback. I had him in red already. He was elevated up to quarterback 20. I had him in the 22 to 26 tier, but at this point, maybe Sam Darnold or Matthew Stafford rest of season. That's probably a fair question.
Yeah, it really is.
From a point perspective, it has to be.
Go ahead. I was just going to say real quick, the Rams have already lost 2, if not 3, of their starting offensive linemen too. And they didn't have a lot of depth to come from in the first place there.
Yeah. And Stafford's getting beat up too. Like you can't lose sight of that. You watch that game, he was hurting at the end and he's just so dang tough. He played through it. But there's a lot of concerns in LA right now.
Yeah, as we're having this conversation, accounting for the injury news, I'm already in my tiers that are part of the DD Fantasy Football under the umbrella, and I'm making adjustments as we're talking here on the show. Matthew Stafford, he drops for me. Pacheco drops. Cooper Kupp drops. If you want to spend fab, or if you feel like you need to throw a fourth to get a Demarcus Robinson, Danny in the DD Fantasy community, he posted that he offered 2/3 for Demarcus Robinson, and it was quickly rejected. And I was like, that was a generous offer, but that's kind of where we are. Tyler Johnson, Demarcus Robinson. I don't know that I'm necessarily intrigued. And then Colby Parkinson, laid a dud. He laid a dud there this week.
He didn't look that impressive, JB, too. Like, I was watching that game. I took some DFS shares of Parkinson. I got a couple Dynasty shares of Parkinson. So I'm like, okay, this is Parkinson week. And it just never really evolved. And as you look at all these guys, too, like, I think off-season Dynasty roster construction, Stafford, Deebo, Cooper Kupp. I don't think we were chasing any of those guys to start with, unless they were at a value and they would like be a plug and play for a contending roster. Pacheco's the only really different one that's like mid-20s, maybe had a little more dynasty shine. It's just disappointing he got hurt, but maybe that goes to Mitch's point. I didn't see how he got hurt exactly, but Mitch always talked about that hard running style that he didn't like. Now here it kind of came to fruition, and he's on the shelf.
Yeah, so Cooper Kupp, if we're talking about it from a pick perspective, it's hard to ever value him as like a lower end second round pick, just because that ceiling is so high when he does play.
Yeah, if he's available for a late second in my leagues, I'll spend every late second I have for him.
Yeah, what about a second and third?
With that? Yeah, that's fine.
And it's funny because once Puka Nacua went out, once Cooper Kupp had that massive target share, he catapulted back up to Dynasty wide receiver 18.
Of course, that's what we do.
Overall, 45 Fantasy Calc Live overall. So now probably goes down to wide receiver 28 to 30, and then 80th overall, probably. But that's the drastic swings. And a lot of people were saying, well, the window is open to move off your Cooper Kupp. I almost invested in a share that fell through, and kind of lucked out there. Deebo Samuel, I think it's kind of a similar situation here. Only missing a few weeks. He's only 28 years old. So I think I'm a little bit more forgiving on Deebo Samuel than I am Cooper Kupp at 31 years old and probably going on IR. Is that fair? Like straight up, Dan, Deebo Samuel or Cooper Kupp?
I mean, probably dynasty bias, JB. I'm rolling with you with Deebo straight up, but I'm a little worried that his 28 years old is like a 31 in fantasy, because they've just ran him hard. In the last couple of years, he just seems made of glass. Like, he is always coming off the field. He is always getting injured, always missing a game or two. So my concern over Deebo is starting to escalate as well.
So I was getting, like, my value with Deebo doesn't really change because this is what I expect from him, right? I don't ever expect him to play 16 or 17 games. You're going to get 12, and those 12 are going to be really good for you, but you just don't know when those 12 are going to happen. Right now, he's injured early. Maybe he's healthy late through the fantasy playoffs, and we're really happy. Or he's, healthy for 6 weeks and gets injured right before the fantasy playoffs. We just know that's what's with the Deebo, that's in his wheelhouse, right? It's just kind of expected. So I never had a high value on him to begin with. If I have him on my teams, I'm not moving him. I'm not like, oh no, I need to get rid of him at this point because he's injured. I'll just wait the couple weeks out, put him back in my lineup, and be really happy with him when he's in there.
Yeah. Enjoy the highs and make sure you have good depth.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, we talk about Pacheco and maybe some actionable takeaways. With Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel, I don't know if there's really anything that actionable unless you truly believe that this is it, especially for Cooper Kupp. This is it. Then we talk about resetting the market. Maybe you do sell for a low second, a late second. Maybe you could do Cooper Kupp in a third for Deontay Johnson in a second. I'm just trying to think of players that nobody wants. Maybe Jalen Polk in a second for Cooper Kupp. If you're, if your season seems to be off to a bad start, maybe that's an opportunity. Now we go to a wide receiver that probably has a little bit more of a market. I don't think we see a shift in value, but AJ Brown, it sounds like he now might miss a few weeks. Mitch, any change here for you?
The biggest thing, and I've said this before, but for any new listeners, when offenses miss, that's why I was messing it up, miss their star wide receiver, that offense turns to complete crap. It happens every single time. Like, we talk about, oh, hey, a quarterback's missing. We already know the team isn't going to perform well probably in the next couple weeks. Watch the Eagles tonight, man. Yes, Barkley looks awesome. Hurts is doing his thing, but that offense isn't where it should be because A.J. Brown is out. And the Eagles are doing well just because Jalen Hurts can run for 60 yards at any point. But as soon as that star player goes out, I'm immediately kind of hedging my bets on all those offenses because that's how much these star wide receivers mean in today's NFL now.
So do you think maybe with AJ Brown being out, maybe less of an AJ Brown thing, but if you're watching this island game here tonight on Monday with the Eagles and the Falcons, you're like, man, Devontae Smith, he really hasn't been doing much. Maybe the window opens up a little bit further on a player like Devontae Smith.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
I don't know. He flashed a little bit while we've been on the air, though. He's like 3 for 30 and a touchdown, Devontae. So he's getting a little life in him here. But there might be a buy low on Drake London as Ray McLeod's the leading receiver after one half. That Atlanta passing game is looking a little rough, boys.
Is it really a buy low on Drake London at this point? Or is it you're buying because he's not an elite wide receiver?
Well, no, that's a great point, though, because if you have Drake London, we talk about resetting the market. Do you sell him for a late first? Because you think the value is going to I
think you could still get more, to be honest. I think you could get a mid first for him, or at least a late first plus a player.
We're going to be talking here probably very shortly, Drake London, or if JSN has another 17 target game.
Oh yeah.
That's realistic.
It's not far off. It's really not.
Here's a weird thing with Atlanta is I think about their roster construction. Through the first half, Bijan Robinson has 10 carries for 72 yards. So you'd think hey, stack the box. They're running all over Philly. The passing game should be open. But what if Kyle Pitts is just not really that good? There's no separation. He can't get open. They misevaluated Darnell Mooney, who's not doing anything. When Ray McLeod's your best receiver, I'm thinking defense are saying, hey, we're going to take Drake London out of this, and we're going to make them beat us with Mooney, Pitts, McLeod, whoever you want. So Atlanta may be having a secondary receiver option, and Kirk Cousins can't run, so you're also a little bit limited there.
No, I think it's a really good point with how the Falcons have built their roster to where you have Pitts and London, both guys who you assume they're going to beat people with just kind of their physicality, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how I don't know if you could have two of those players like that on the same offense, both be high target earners. You could probably have one. You could have an Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? But then you have to have someone else who can separate on the other side. And we know Pitts isn't that great at separation.
Yeah, I haven't even seen him tonight. He's invisible.
Yeah. Right, I think he did get one catch for 2 yards, That's what we do now.
He is in mid-season form. Gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
Bryce Young was benched today.
So
we talked about him a bit last week in resetting the market. I couldn't get any second last week with my one lone share. I was very upset. So now I have one share of Bryce Young just creeping around. Does he ever I'm going to say it again. I'm not even going to ask the question. I'm going to make a statement. I'm going to tell people you don't need to go out and buy low. You don't need to. The ship has sailed. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe we get a Geno Smith-like career revitalization. Maybe a Sam Darnold situation pops up. But I'm not betting on it, okay? There's no need to go out and try to buy low on a quarterback that was benched for Andy Dalton. And he's still our quarterback. I don't believe you. Hey, Dan, you're still our guy here, Lackawanna, but we're going to bring somebody else in to do your job just for now. But you're still the guy. Don't worry. BS.
That's just keeping a harmonious locker room until you could part ways. And I think that's what they're doing right now. I mean, Dalton's old. Maybe they'll give Young one more look later in the season if they figure some things out. But it's I think, going to be a long season, a lot of losses, and a high draft pick next year where they'll get their next answer. And then at some point, Bryce Young's probably going to go to another team, and he'll be the next Trey Lance. Feel bad for the kid, man, but some careers go to die in certain teams, and Carolina seems to be one.
I will say, though, as sad as it sounds, this gives some hope to those Deontay Johnson shares. I mean,
we're hoping on that offense.
we're hoping that Andy Dalton comes in, and it's sad that you're relying on Andy Dalton to make a difference, but his one start in 2023, 58 pass attempts. Adam Thielen had 14 targets. DJ Shark, we're all tongue-tied tonight, had 11 targets. Miles Sanders had 9. So hopefully they're able to do something offensively. Just remotely resemble an NFL offense to give some hope to these other pieces. And I think the big takeaway here is just, again, to reiterate, don't try to buy low on Bryce Young. You don't need to do it.
Okay, so I have to admit something.
Oh, no.
I had a league to where my quarterbacks are terrible, right? So before the games on Sunday, I traded a Trey Benson for Bryce Young. I was like, you know what? I will take a shot on this. It was a swing and I missed, right? Like I tried.
You listened to the show last week, Mitch.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
JB.
I
You didn't
disagree
listen
with
to last
both.
week.
No, I will admit, most of the times I'll listen back to you too. I'm agreeing. Most of that show, I was like, nope. But with the Bryce Young, I do. Like, I was talking in the Discord about how I watched that whole game from the L22 film. That's on NFL Plus. It's awesome. Bryce Young looked terrible, but I was like, you know what? My quarterback situation is bad. I'll take a shot, and I missed, which is fine.
Still bad.
But so that happened. I don't care. It's over. You know, it happened. How bad? Here's one thing that I don't think people are talking about yet. How bad do you have to be as a second-year quarterback for them to bring in a head coach that is supposed to groom you, and within 2 games, that head coach is like, no, you can't win. We're not playing you anymore. And he didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't do the whole like, oh yeah, hey, Bryce Young's going to start later in the year. He's like, hey, anything I said to Bryce, that's in private. But moving forward, Dalton's our starter, and that's how it's going to be. There was no like, hey, you know, this is just for a couple game thing. It's a flat out, Bryce Young isn't good. So Bryce Young isn't our starting quarterback. And for that to happen after 2 games, Bryce Young's done. Like, he is Kenny Pickett's the backup for like the Eagles now, right? Bryce Young's best hope is to be traded to like the Chargers and hope he could go behind Harbaugh and Harbaugh can do something for him. That is his best hope right now to hopefully be in the NFL for 10 years if that's what he wants. I mean, he gets that number 1 money, so he's set up for life there. Maybe he decides to go do other things. But as of right now, I mean, the guy was clueless out there. He can't pick. Blitz recognition's terrible. Even when he goes outside the pocket, it's terrible. So it's nothing new. It's sad, but you know, they're moving on. And I honestly, for the Panthers, good for them. They didn't wait till week 8 and see this train wreck for another 7 weeks. They're like, you know what? This is awful. They want to compete this year. So good for them for making the decision after week 2, because most teams wouldn't do that.
We already talked about resetting the market a little bit. I want to run through a few players. Again, 30 minutes in, all these injuries start popping up, and some of our rosters are probably completely decimated. But we do want to touch on some players that were either, again, looking to buy above market or maybe sell below market. But Dan, I want to talk about the guy that you're bringing to the table first here, a quarterback that is just nobody wanted anything to do with him. And now all of a sudden, that Saints offense, and you witnessed it firsthand this week as a Cowboys fan, this Saints offense is firing on all cylinders. They are running so many different personnel packages. They are running an extremely high rate of motion compared to what we saw previously. Derek Carr, are you getting behind that wheel? Are you taking that car for a spin around the block? Are you driving it off the lot?
I am rolling the dice here, and that same car that was like a lemon just 3 weeks ago, before two weeks of NFL football, he was probably low, very low in all, near the bottom of all our ranks. But we're watching this quarterback market shakeup. We know we got a Saints team that head coach Dennis Allen said, he's my guy. I've had him before. I want him. They finally changed the coordinator, and now I still have a little reservation because they played Carolina and Dallas. Like, I always try to say take the bias away from Dallas. Their defense was horrible last week. I think the opposite is true of Dallas, where we were worried about their rookie O linemen, and their rookie O linemen held their own, and their offense is for the most part moving. There's still some run game questions, but they put rookies into starting roles on defense, and boy, like they were not filling holes, and New Orleans could do whatever they want. But here nor there, the Saints have figured this out, because a year ago, it didn't matter who the Saints were playing. They were having some issues. You'd have the occasional okay Carr game, but there was struggles. But they're using Shaheed in a whole totally different way, where I wishing I had more Rashid Shaheed shares. But I am buying now. I have bumped Carr up to that Baker middle tier quarterback place in my rankings, where I think there's some stability. And Carr has another good season. We're probably going to see 2-3 years of Derek Carr, unlike those situations where it's like, hey, is Danny Dimes going to have a job next year? Is Will Levis going to have a job next year? Is Sean Payton a hoax in Denver with what's going on over there? There's just a lot of questions. So I'm going to go with the stability, the production, and I've gobbled up a couple shares of Carr this week, where I had a couple by default before. Now I got a handful, and I'm banking on a good season out of New Orleans and Derek Carr.
You mentioned Baker Mayfield. That was our guy last week that I was talking about, and he went out and had a decent game.
JB, real quick, I just want to say, like last week, trading Bryce Young in a deal for Baker, and even against Mitch's good Detroit defense, he was rolling around that pocket, man. I had my legs up with a cold beverage, just saying, John Bauer, I love you, buddy. That was the best conversation we ever had. So just want to give you kudos to last week's episode. Great conversation.
Wait, Mitch, I got to out Mitch here. Dan, you posted the trade in the Discord.
Yep,
and Mitch DMs me and goes, Dan did what?
Yeah, no, I didn't like it. Didn't like
and
it.
But then I said right away, wait till you listen to the episode. Wait till you listen to the episode.
All tight in. JSN woke up a little bit, so it wasn't a freebie, but from a quarterback
that great last
position,
week.
JSN looked pretty good. Yeah. All right, so Mitch, I want to run you through the ringer here with Derek Carr, because we know Dan, he's moved up my tiers as well.
Yep.
And I think he still has kind of that Derek Carr stink, but I tried to acquire in a league for a pair of seconds, I believe, in a 14-team league. The asking price was a first, so I walked away. But Derek Carr in a 12-team Superflex, start 11 PPR, Mitch, Derek Carr or Michael Pittman?
Why do you gotta do this to me, man? Like, I'm the Pittman guy. Anthony Richardson, I'm worried. Derek Carr. But let me say this, that like you have to be quarterback needy in order to make that trade, right? If I have two quarterbacks, I'm not even discussing the trade. But let's say Watson is one of my quarterbacks, or maybe Bryce Young was for whatever horrible reason. Then I would make a trade like that. But I would still want more. I don't think I would trade Pittman straight up for Carr. So I'll go Pittman.
Dan?
Yeah, if I have two starting quarterbacks that I'm very content with, I probably need Pittman. A lot of our leagues are start 3 wide receivers. So maybe a slight edge for Pittman, but they're the kind of trades I try to make 2 for 2. But your question was 1 for 1, JB. I'd slight lean Pittman, but situation specific.
Well, here's the thing too. Like, if the asking price, like I still have Pittman in a tier above Derek Carr, but that gap is certainly closing for me based off of what we're seeing in Indianapolis and New Orleans. But if the asking price on Derek Carr is a first, or a player like, the name recognition and value of a Michael Pittman, I'm probably going to sniff around and see if it makes sense. Maybe Geno Smith. I mean, even you could probably get Aaron Rodgers for a heck of a lot less. I don't have them tiered together, but I think the price discrepancy, it makes sense. Or go down even further and look at a Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones maybe. But okay, so Carr for 2 seconds. That's a trade that went through according to dynastydaddy.com, the trade database. Mitch, 12-team Superflex, start 11, half PPR.
Carr.
And 2 weeks ago, Carr was a throw-in a deal.
Yeah, I didn't like Carr 2 weeks ago, but what Kubiak has done with that offense, I love it. And this is what you have to do. Like, I had my takes 2 weeks ago that are flat out wrong now. And I'm more than happy to move off them and readjust because the Saints offense looks really good.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Carr was in that tier with like Danny Dimes and like Bryce Young. Like there were a handful of Russ Wilsons. Those guys, like we just didn't know.
Yeah,
but he's gained stability, and that's a wonderful thing.
I mean, to see, I mean, it's basically like a Geno Smith, what we saw a couple years ago. Really seeing a career resurgence. Now, this is a 0.5 point tight end premium. Carr or Goddard?
Carr, smash.
I knew Dad was going to say that.
But again, think about
that. I would have done that before the season started.
But the thing is, before the season, we couldn't even move these guys. But we wouldn't. I mean, it's super flex though. Like I wasn't trying to move him for a Goddard even before this season. It just didn't. That's not like a roster construction trade that makes sense. But now you could move him. It's great to see Carr active in the trade market again.
There's a little bit more liquidity there. There's a little bit more of a market, and I still think one of the better values, especially if you're in a +6 passing touchdown league, I still think one of the better values at his cost with what you could get from a production standpoint. I mean, look at the quarterback scoring. Patrick Mahomes has not been good for fantasy purposes. Josh Allen kind of had a dud this last week. CJ Stroud, he's been okay. Joe Burrow, rough week 1. Anthony Richardson, we talked about in the Start Sit show. I just threw a number out there. I was like, he'll get 28.6 this week.
I took the
I don't even know if he had 8.6.
But you know what? The difference between like all those guys and guys that we want to get off of, like they like might have looked bad for a game, or like the fantasy points not have been there, but they still like flash, or it's just a 1 week sample. Like when you watch like Bryce Young over 2 weeks in all those games last year, like you watch offenses that just don't move the ball and you sit there watching the TV and you want to break your television set. Like that's not the case with like, I don't know, like Carr could sling it and he's moving out of the pocket and doing all these things last week. I was like, okay, you never saw certain guys do that. So there's ability there, but he is the kind of guy that has to have the team around him. That's the thing with a Derek Carr. Patrick Mahomes doesn't have to have all these all-world guys around him. He still makes plays. So at least now we got Carr and a team of talent around him with coaching that's setting it up nice.
And that defense looks pretty respectable too. All right, Mitch. I don't. This wide receiver that you're bringing to the table is not going to surprise anybody. But no. Nico Collins, he's been a stud.
So here's the thing: is like he leads the league in receptions, but he has like the 11th most targets. So it's not like he's getting targeted more than everybody. Did I say receptions? I meant yards. Sorry,
receiving yards. I knew what you meant.
Yeah, 25% target share. And the thing is, I believe he should be valued right where Amon-Ra St. Brown is. We've seen this before with a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown. He didn't have the draft pedigree coming in. And so it took us a while to catch on, right? Then all of a sudden, like Amon-Ra should have been ranked where he was 2 years prior to where he was now, right? I've seen the trades you have listed. In my opinion, I know dynasty values are different. Do I care if I have Jamar Chase in my starting lineup, or do I care if I have Nico Collins in my starting lineup every single week? I don't care. And I know there is a dynasty value difference, but that's what I'm saying is go out and get Nico Collins. I had a team to where it's one of my rebuilds, so I couldn't do it, but someone offered me Nico Collins for my 26 first. That 26 first is probably the 101. It's the only reason why I didn't make that trade. But you offer me that in any league, I am hammering that. Like, I really believe he is worth minimum 2 mid-first round picks, and I'm more than happy to pay that on almost every one of my leagues, unless it's one of those like huge rebuild that I know I don't really want anyone that's going to score points right now.
Dan, let me ask you the questions here. Some of the trades that have gone through. Nico for Jalen Waddle, a 25 second, a 25 third. It's a 12-team Superflex start 9 full PPR.
I want Nico because I see a teardrop in receiver. As talented as Waddle is, there's a teardrop. And I think Waddle's a little made of glass. So I'll take Nico. You could keep the change that you're giving me with Waddle.
I'm there too, Mitch. I'm assuming you're there too.
Of course. Yep.
Dan, Nico and Malik Neighbors. This is a start 11.5 PPR, 12 team for CD Lamb. Again, Nico and Neighbors for CD Lamb, start 11.
Before I answer that, I just want to say, Mitch, John is just relishing in this Nico talk because he's been very bullish on him. And I have listened to you, John. I have listened to you. It's hard, but in a start 11, I'm going to take Nico and Neighbors. I think you're getting 2 number ones for 1 number one. As great as Lamb is, and he's my boy, that is 2 studs that are young and with a lot of production. I'll take the 2.
Agreed.
I agree. This is a 0.5 tight end premium, full PPR otherwise. Dan, Nico for your boy, Brock Bowers, who very well may be and maybe should be the dynasty tight end 1 right now.
Is, yeah.
Let me get this straight. This is a half, just a half point.
PPR,
1.5
receiver, 1.5 for tight ends.
Being that it's only 1.5. Now, this is still very hard, but I'm going to go with Nico just because I just think the touchdown upside and Stroud and all that offense. But if it was 2.0, JB, like I've been really looking at this tight end position, and it's going back to like conversations of old. There is a cliff that it drops off. So the mega advantage you have by having a Bowers McBride type is incredible. But 1.5, I will go with Nico.
Completely agree. Yep.
Man, do you guys remember? And Dan, you were loving this because what is your exposure to Brock Bowers?
Has to be pretty
It's
good.
high. It's
Over
high.
50%?
It's probably not over because there was such a demand for him and I didn't have a lot of number ones, but I'm probably close to 50%. And it feels great.
Remember when it was such a bad landing spot?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't scare me.
Cream
JB.
rises, gentlemen. The cream rises to the top. And remember the picture from the combine? Like he just looks so nerdy and like, oh, this dude can't be good. I know it's only 2 weeks in, but he looks the part. Anyway, this is not about Brock Bowers, but I had to give Dan some kudos there. Not to say like everybody liked Brock Bowers, but Dan was very heavily putting his money where his mouth was.
Yep.
All right.
Hey, I was kind of lucky, man. But being a Georgia fan and getting to watch him every single week, like he just knew he was a dude. So awesome to see.
From a market perspective, I mean, Nico, he's up there, fantasy calc, wide receiver 11. I have him at 9. I see that's
serious, dude.
Like the conversations always come up, and it's like if there wasn't a market, like it didn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah.
He has the contract extension. He's there through 27. He's tied to CJ Stroud. Forget about Stephon Diggs coming to town. Forget about Tank Dell being there. I think he very well, forget about market, could be a top 5 receiver. Just from a dynasty perspective, but again, ignoring the market. Like
I believe he is. And so this is like the takeaway is go pay the whatever wide receiver 9 price, whatever it is, go pay that because he's going to perform as a top 5 wide receiver for the rest of this year and next year and the year after that.
What's nice is he's tied to CJ Stroud. He's talented and he's tied to Stroud. That's
just so good.
Wonderful.
And I think that's what kind of makes, even though the targets have just been, I mean, he's getting like 65% target share, but that's what makes Malik Neighbors so impressive right now. Yeah, he's getting the targets, but you're tied to Daniel Jones and you're still a monster. You know, he had a critical drop there this last week, but he's just going to be just fine. Dan, I am very interested.
Me too.
This gentleman that you want to talk about here, because I know where Mitch stands. And I think I align with him, so it's going to be a fun conversation. But Caleb Williams, are we panicking too early here?
No, I think if someone has an issue with Caleb, they are panicking too early. Now, I said this last week, and I stand by it. There are O-line issues in Chicago, which is going to cause problems for this year. You need to be patient for these reasons why. Next season, they're going to fix that O-line. All right. They're going to get another high draft pick. They're going to draft a stud. They're going to protect him. This year was about getting him weapons. Next year's going to be about getting the O-line. He still makes these magical throws that just the average human being quarterback cannot make. Like, he could throw the ball and he could run the ball. He's still learning. He's making some mistakes, but they are correctable mistakes that's happening there. So all I'm saying is, when you look at this quarterback landscape, after the top like 8-10 quarterbacks, he is better than these old middle of the tier other dudes. Like, he has such a great career ahead of him. So that's all I'm saying. Bet on talent, be patient, wither the storm of 2024 in that O-line. He's going to get better as the season progresses, and next year they will fix the O-line.
I feel like we heard this with Zach Wilson from people.
Yeah, no,
I feel like
that.
up until yesterday, we were hearing about Bryce Young still able to turn the tide. Like, people are still, Trevor Lawrence is going to turn it around. Maybe it's not too early to jump ship. And I think overall, I mean, can I be honest here? Now, it's a 10-team league, so take it with a grain of salt. I tried to get a 25 first and a 26 first for Caleb Williams. Couldn't get it.
Okay. So listening to that game and listening to Collinsworth last night, like, I had to put it on mute for a while. He's talking about, look at these throws that Caleb is making. I'm sorry. And he's like, only a couple people on this planet can do it. Josh Allen can do it. Mahomes can do it. Lamar can do it. CJ Stroud can do it. Jordan Love can do it.
Baker Mayfield could probably do it.
That's the thing, is like, we try to make him out to where he has like this magical arm. It's a great arm. It is. It's great. It's like top 15 in the NFL. It might be top 10, but you're not going to tell me for one instance that he's like has a top 5 arm. It's a great arm. It's good. But I don't know if that arm talent is going to make up for the stuff that he just continues to do. He did this at USC. That pick that he threw late in the game, I can't remember if it was third or fourth quarter, to where he just went outside and he bought himself a little bit of time. And I will say, Caleb is awesome in the pocket. The way he evades pressure, now that's elite. Without a doubt, he does that better than most quarterbacks in the NFL. But the decisions he makes afterwards, it's the same decisions he was making in college. There hasn't been any growth there. And my biggest worry is the coaching staff that they have there now isn't capable of getting him out of those situations. So what I hope for Caleb, and I hope, like, I have probably 6 of my dynasty teams, I actually think he's my highest rostered rookie at this point.
I'm sorry.
Send more my way. Send more my way.
Yeah, my thing is they need a new coaching staff. And like, I don't care how the rest of the season goes. This coaching staff is not one that is going to bring out the best of Caleb Williams. Get them out of there and get him someone that can help build him to get rid of the stuff that he shouldn't be doing and just use what he's really good at. He's great at escaping pressure. That's great. But at the same time, don't throw it into triple coverage just because you choose to. Just throw it out of bounds at that point.
See, in the first half, like, whenever the first read was open, he hit a few slants, you know, like he was getting the ball out. It's like, yes, evading the sacks and the pressures, it's one of his strengths. But like you said, Mitch, it kind of starts to break down after that.
Yes.
Like, yes, he can do it up to that point. But Dan, before we even get to the trades, I want to see exactly where you are. Tell me which of these quarterbacks you will take Caleb Williams over. Okay? So just say the name that you want. Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson. CJ Stroud. Jalen Hurts.
But I would negotiate with you.
How are you hesitating?
Well, I mean, I want to win this year.
He's a Cowboys fan.
Jalen Hurts,
Eagles. It's fair.
I'm set with Jalen Hurts, but I do hate the Eagles. That's why I'm like you know, if I could get another stud in there in the first round or something, make it work.
Joe Burrow.
I might got Burrow ranked higher right now, so I'll say Burrow.
Kyler Murray.
Kyler's stock's rising, man. I'm really liking Arizona this year, but I'm a Caleb guy. Again, like JB, like I want to win this year too, so I'm gonna
Just
right
in
now.
a bubble. No. Who would you take Caleb Williams over any of these guys?
I mean, if I have a startup draft today, I'd be loading up my running back and receiver room, and you know, I'd be happy with landing with Caleb and passing up on a couple of those guys. But no, right now I have. I'll say.
Did you just say you're going to take running backs over taking Caleb?
I would take like the elite
comment.
receivers and the running backs, and I'd let Caleb fall to me, is what I'm saying. But I got Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, Stroud, Burrow, Prescott, Hurts, Love before Caleb. Kyler's been rising up. He wasn't there before this season, but Kyler's rising.
Can I have a take that I don't think is a hot take? Jaden Daniels would be the number one pick in Superflex drafts right now. And I would trade every one of my Caleb Williams shares for Jaden Daniels this second if I could. I just don't think I can.
I actually think for a lot of people, Marvin Neighbors would go above the quarterbacks right now.
Yeah. I don't know. Because quarterbacks are still
they would go above
was the best wide receiver prospect to come out in the last 10 years is what we said. And he still went second in drafts after Caleb.
What we know 2 weeks in, I think Caleb Williams will be the fourth pick off the board.
Oh, I think so.
Actually, correction. If it's tight end premium, Brock's going above him. Is that
true?
I think Jaden Daniels, the two receivers, and Brock all would go over Caleb Williams in a lot of 12-team Superflex rookie drafts with a tight end premium component.
Let me backtrack, though. I'm looking at this from a little bit different lens. And here's the things I agree with Mitch. Like Chris Collinsworth and like all these announcers, you're better off watching the games on mute than all the hype because they don't break down the game like they should, except for maybe like Troy Aikman. He'll even throw Dallas under the bus when he's ticked off. Like he'll shoot it straight. But 90% of announcers, they're not talking about how bad the coaching is or what they should be doing with the offense and all that stuff. So agree with Mitch there 100%. I also agree with Mitch on I could see a potential coaching change. I don't think any of us were a Shane Waldron fan. Matt Eberflus, I mean, like I just not seeing it. So after 16 games this year, if this thing is a train wreck, I could see them doing that. I'm coming from the perspective of he's going to get better. And after like all those guys go, JB, like those top 8, 9, 10 quarterbacks, I want to land at Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams or, you know, put even Kyler before him. I don't want to land at the Brock Purdy's and the Tuas and the Bakers and the Staffords and the Cousins and the Genos and the Carrs. Like none of those guys.
Nobody's saying that. You wouldn't take Justin Herbert over Caleb straight up?
I want Caleb.
No.
I want Caleb. He's got no receivers with the Chargers, so that gives the
Quentin
Bears.
Johnson.
Caleb Williams has the receivers and couldn't find them. So what's the problem?
He's
Dan?
finding DJ Moore. It's taken some time, but it's 2 weeks, JB. He's too talented to be panicking after 2 weeks. I'm saying be very aggressive to try to get him if you don't have those elite quarterbacks on your roster. Be aggressive. That's all I'm saying.
Be aggressive. All right, well, let's talk about some of the trades. Mitch, I want to start with you. Caleb for Amon-Ra St. Brown, start 11 PPR.
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Dan?
I mean, straight up, I'm taking Sun God, but if it's in a super flex startup draft, I'm going to make sure I got my super flex quarterbacks first.
Dan's a big he's doing a lot of landscaping because all he's doing is hedging tonight. I'm the hedger usually, but in your words, Dan, let's show some conviction. Mitch, Caleb in a 26 first for Jalen Hurts, 12-team super flex start 10.
Caleb in the first because I could flip him for more than Hurts.
I like that, Mitch. I like that. Thinking ahead. And you got a first to play with, even though it's 26. That's so disheartening. It's not 25, but
I'll take Jalen Hurts. 12-team super flex. I'll take Jalen Hurts there.
Mitch, I think we could hedge, though. It really depends on roster construction there.
No, I would do that. You could offer me that in any trade because I know I could get rid of Caleb for like 90% of what Hurts' value is, and I'm getting a first on top.
I don't think you could. I just told you it was only one. It was a 10-team league, granted, but I couldn't get a 25 first and 26 first.
Maybe you should try to trade him to a Utes fan like me, and they're like, you know what? I don't want Caleb on my rosters. I say that as I have a lot of Caleb on my rosters.
All right, Mitch, Caleb for JJ McCarthy, Brian Thomas, and a 25 third. 12-team Superflex start
Caleb
10 PPR.
Smash. Like,
yes, give me Caleb.
Hammer.
I don't want to roll the dice and pray for McCarthy.
For me.
Come on, JB.
I think now that from a market perspective is wild, but I want to revisit that specific trade. You know, it's kind of scary. So let's do it around Halloween, guys.
We're doing it. We're making the trade now. We're not making it Halloween. Halloween,
I want to revisit that exact trade in 6 weeks.
Want to say why I'm not worried? Brian Thomas Jr.'s quarterback is Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence is not good.
So he's Caleb Williams.
I think he's probably going to be worse than Caleb Williams, to be honest. Give Caleb Williams 4 years. He'll be better than Trevor Lawrence.
I can't wait to get trashed for my thoughts. You know, the things I'm saying here. But
just wait for the YouTube comments on this show.
This dude is a freaking. Anyway. Well, we're not going to get real quick, Dan. You had Brock Bowers, Brock or Laporta?
I am on Brock. I love Laporta still. I'm not like freaked out, but I just think Brock's an elite once in a lifetime. He's the next Kelsey.
Mitch?
Today I'll take Brock.
Yeah, Laporta. What's going on, man? What is going? He's still getting the raw participation, but Jameson's kind of getting his, so we'll see. Mitch, Brock or Nico? Wait, we did this one already.
Yeah,
we did this one. It was the duplicate.
Yep. So just Nico across the board there because it was the 0.5 tight end premium. Mitch, you're sick of Dalton Kincaid already.
Yeah, we'll hit on him quick. I know we're almost an hour in already, but hold on. Give me 1 second. So Kincaid, this was my favorite stat that I pulled up. He's ran 38 routes. He has 44 yards on 38 routes. Like, he has a 12% target share. He's the first read on 20% of the passing plays, which means like they're looking somewhere else 80% of the time. It's awesome. He is out there running routes. And we want people who are playing with Josh Allen. The problem is he isn't doing enough to earn targets. Targets are an earned stat. He's not doing enough to do it. The Bills are a rushing team. And like John brought this up 2 weeks ago, he laid it out. The second they made the offensive coordinator change, everything changed for Kincaid. It's looking the same, and they're a better running team than they were last year. Do like Kincaid, let me pull up John's tiers real quick. You have Laporta over him, fair. McBride over him, fair. Brock Bowers over him, fair. Kyle Pitt.
Kyle Pitt actually.
We're scrolling past that one. Kincaid is tight end 4 to 5 by default. It's because everybody else after him is really old or they're not good. And so Kincaid is there, but there is no chance I am paying that price to get Kincaid on my teams. If I can trade him, if I could add a small piece to somehow get up to Laporta, McBride, or Bowers, I will do whatever I have to get
Devil's advocate, though, Laporta isn't doing anything either.
He will.
Yeah. So let me take a timeout.
They're throwing it 60 times a game, though. It's not. That's just something that's
Valid.
happening with Laporta. Yeah.
Valid.
I got to take a timeout. I was going to throw the challenge, but I'm going to go with the timeout instead because it depends what we're talking about with Kincaid. I'm calling the timeout because I just got to say, I watched that Buffalo-Miami. It was an island game Thursday night, and they intentionally were feeding Kincaid for the first couple plays. It was like by design because they didn't get him the ball enough the week before. And then like the bottom fell out on Miami, and like Buffalo didn't even need the passing game anymore. It was like the James Cook show. So I think like if that was a competitive game, I think they would have fed Kincaid a little bit more than maybe those usage stats show. But I don't disagree, Mitch. Like like I think we were onto it here in Dynasty Theory. John was pulling like spreadsheets out of the sky, all kinds of analytical data of like why we should have some reservation on Kincaid. But I think that reservation is he's not that top 3 that we hoped. Like he's not going to get that Laporta like stats like last year and everything that we hoped. But I think he's still going to have some good weeks that are going to help you win certain weeks. And I think over the course of the year, hey, if he's still a top 10, like I just be hesitant to move him in any capacity unless, Mitch, you are able to get up for one of those top 3, or you just like you host somebody that was still for some reason thinking he's like number 1 value. But I don't want to drop below him, Mitch. Like that tight end landscape is so ugly. I'd be very hesitant.
If I could trade Kincaid, let's say for George Kittle and an early second, I would do it on 90% of my rosters.
Oh man, but like, what happens when
that's
like
something I could have done 2 weeks ago?
I don't know if I did.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd rather Kittle or just Kincaid year to year on my roster, taking above average receiving type tight end, and like I love Kittle like in the short term, but long term, dynasty, nah.
All right. Well, very quickly, no tight end premium, full PPR. Mitch, Kincaid or Devontae Smith?
No premium, Devontae Smith.
Dan?
Yeah.
Need an answer.
I still want Kincaid. No, I'll take Devontae.
No.
That stinks. No premium. That's close, man. Like depends what my tight end situation is. I'm not getting stuck with Cole Kmet and Tyler Conklin, so I might have to take Kincaid unless I have another answer.
No, I'll find us. I'll go pay nothing for Hunter Henry. Kincaid or Pitts in a 25-second, 1.5 PPR.
Kincaid.
Yeah,
Ray McLeod's better than Pitts.
yeah, that's the thing is like when you said that I want to pull up Kyle Pitts because we're recording this during Monday Night Football, so I wanted to make sure that like he didn't have 6 catches all of a sudden. No, he has 3 targets. So yeah, Pitts is replaced.
Mooney scored.
Did Mooney score? Oh,
Mooney scored, boys. He even did
wait,
somersault.
Kirk Cousins, he's not good, right?
42-yard catch. Oh, and
all right, and then, all right. Well, we're not doing a live play-by-play here. Mitch, you like James Conner. We don't need to go through everything, but I want to give you credit.
He's just a great containing running back to go get. That isn't going to cost you a first. It's going to cost you a second and something. Go get James Conner in your teams. That Arizona offense looks amazing.
Dan put, I'm going to sell below market on every Bronco and Panther.
All out. Now get rid of them all.
There might not be a market. I don't know if you could go low because, I mean, they're at savers at this point.
Can't even watch.
Hunter Henry's your go-to cheap tight end production. Wide receiver usage, at least 80% route participation and at least 15% first down per route run in the first 2 weeks, each of the games. Nico Collins and Chris Godwin, end of list.
Yep.
By Hunter Henry, man. Oh, sorry.
Hunter Henry, running backs with at least 60% rushing market share and 10% target share in each of the first 2 weeks. Tony Pollard did it both weeks. That's it. That's it, Dan. Tony Pollard. And then the Seahawks running back. So Zach Charbonnet, if Kenneth Walker is out, I actually am whistling a little bit of a different tune just because of the usage.
He looks terrible, man. He doesn't look good out there.
Again, but you're getting the more than lion's share of the work. Now, I say I'm whistling a different tune. I had him as a random third. Like, I'm not saying.
You're trading Charbonnet for a third?
He's trading a third for Charbonnet.
I would hope so. I would trade a third for Charbonnet. You're not getting him for a third.
No, but I didn't say offer a third. I said that that's where I had him. So it's not like I'm like saying go out there and spend a first on him.
Okay.
I hate when
I was just saying. I mean, I hate Charbonnet. I
hate it,
and I will send every third I own for Charbonnet. That's fine.
But he looks so bad, Mitch. He looks so bad, right?
It's a third-round pick.
But he looks so bad.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad that you're seeing my point here. Thank you.
Get out of here.
It's a great way to close out what you guys fighting.
Final thoughts, Dan, for the 260th time on Dynasty Theory, just over an hour today. What do you got for our listeners?
Hey, we're figuring things out after 2 weeks. Don't panic on certain things, but we should be identifying our team needs to make trades in Dynasty. So please, find some ways to improve your teams. Get active in the trade market this week. There's some opportunities. And also watch this week's schedule. John will be complaining in the Discord after the 1 o'clock games because they're so terrible. And then the high-scoring fireworks come at 4 o'clock. But there are 2 Monday night games on this slate, so it's a little bit different. So keep an eye and prepare for those 2 Monday nighters.
That's awful.
Don't panic after 2 weeks, but get rid of Caleb Williams for any third that you could have used on Zach Charbonnet. Mitch, final thoughts. What do you got?
No, I think it's a really good point. Like the elite players, we thought they were elite coming in. They're still elite. One thing I would just take note of is coaching things. Like we know the Bears are terribly coached, right? Starting to wonder about the Jaguars as well because they keep repeating the same mistakes over and over and over. And there's a point to where it's just everything there needs to get changed. But yeah, my final thought is just slow down on the elite player. Oh, they're awful now. Sam Laporta will be fine. A lot of these elite players will be fine. It's been 2 weeks. We have 16 more to go. It's out ever since the schedule changed. It always throws me off now. 16 more to go. They'll be fine. Let's hit it.
My final thought, go out and still try to get Chris Godwin if there's any type of discount. Hopefully you all enjoyed this week's episode. The fireworks here at the end. Mitch and I putting the boxing gloves on, getting the maybe a cage. I don't know. For Mitch Sorensen, Dan Lamagna, I'm John Bauer. We'll catch everybody next week.